Let me tell you something that most people never hear. Words are more powerful than appearances. You've been told your whole life that attraction comes from how you look, the car you drive, the money in your pocket, or the status you project. But here's the truth, all of that can grab attention, but it can't hold attention. Looks may catch someone's eye, but words keep their heart, their mind, and their trust. Think about it. How many times have you met someone who looked impressive at first? They dressed sharp, they carried themselves with confidence, maybe they even had that smile that made them stand out. But then they opened their mouth, and within a few minutes, the magic was gone. Their words were shallow, their tone was arrogant, their conversation was all about themselves. Suddenly, the attraction evaporated. Why? Because words reveal character. They show respect, they demonstrate value, and without the right words, even the best first impression crumbles. Now flip the script. How many times have you met someone who didn't look like the loudest person in the room, but the moment they spoke, you leaned in closer? Something about the way they spoke made you feel respected, understood, connected. They weren't the tallest, richest, or flashiest person around, but their words carried weight. You couldn't help but be drawn in. That's the difference. Words can build bridges faster than appearances ever could. Here's what most people don't understand. Attraction isn't just about romance. Attraction is universal. It's about drawing people closer, friends, colleagues, clients, even strangers. It's about making people feel that being around you makes them better, safer, and more valued. You don't attract people by demanding attention. You attract them by giving them attention in a way that resonates. And words are the tool for that. Words matter because they go past the surface. When you speak, people aren't just hearing sounds. They're experiencing how you make them feel. Every conversation you have leaves an emotional imprint. People might not remember exactly what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And the right words can make someone feel seen, heard, and respected in a way nothing else can. That's real attraction. Think of the people who inspire you the most. Maybe it's a teacher who changed the way you saw the world. Maybe it's a leader who gave you courage. Maybe it's a close friend who made you feel understood in your darkest times. Chances are, what sticks with you isn't how they looked, it's what they said. A single sentence, the right 4 words spoken at the right time can stay with someone forever. That's the kind of power words hold. And here's something critical to understand. Words have the ability to either build connection or destroy it instantly. When you speak, you're either building trust or breaking it. You're either opening the door for someone to step closer or you're closing it in their face. That's why careless words push people away. Sarcasm, dismissiveness, arrogance, these make people feel smaller, not bigger. And no one is drawn to someone who makes them feel small. On the other hand, thoughtful words, kind words, words that validate and show understanding, those are magnetic. People naturally want to be close to those who make them feel valued. Now, some people believe words are just decoration, something you add on top of your personality or looks. But in reality, words are the foundation. They shape how others see you, how they remember you, and how much influence you carry. If your looks or your status open a door, your words decide whether you get invited inside or whether that door shuts forever. Even in conflict, words are everything. Imagine 2 people arguing. Both are heated, both are frustrated. The one who knows how to use words wisely isn't just more attractive, they're more powerful. Because attraction isn't just about charm, it's about influence. When you can calm someone, redirect anger, or restore respect with the words you choose, that's when people see you as someone worth following. That's when people trust you. That's when they want to be around you even when times are tough. Here's where most people go wrong. They chase attraction by polishing everything external, looks, style, possessions, while ignoring the internal skill of communication. They spend hours in the gym, hours shopping for the right clothes, hours curating the perfect image online. And while none of that is wrong, it's empty without the ability to connect through words. Because at the end of the day, when the lights go out, when the filters are gone, when the first impressions fade, all that's left is your ability to communicate. That's what keeps people leaning in instead of walking away. Words are the difference between being noticed and being remembered. And that's what we're talking about in this speech. 4 simple words that, when spoken with sincerity, can unlock trust, admiration, and connection in any conversation. But before we get there, you need to grasp this. See, looks may introduce you to the room, but words decide if the room keeps you. There are 4 words so powerful, so magnetic, that they can completely transform the way people see you and feel about you. These words aren't complicated. They aren't poetic. They're simple, but the simplicity is what makes them so disarming. When spoken sincerely, they make the other person feel heard, valued, and safe. And those 3 things, being heard, being valued, being safe, are what every human being craves at the deepest level. The 4 words are, tell me more about, that's it. 4 words. 4 words that turn a shallow interaction into a meaningful one. 4 words that open up conversations, build trust, and create connection faster than anything else. Why? Because in a world where everyone is desperate to talk, desperate to be heard, desperate to prove themselves, almost nobody is willing to listen. And when you're the person who steps back and says, "Tell me more about," you separate yourself instantly. You stop being like everyone else and start being the kind of person people are drawn to. Think about the last time someone truly wanted to hear from you. Not rushed, not half distracted, not waiting for their turn to talk, but genuinely curious about what you were saying. How did it feel? It felt good, didn't it? It felt different. That's because being listened to is one of the greatest forms of respect. And when you use those 4 words, you're giving people that gift. Most people approach conversations like they're competitions. They listen just long enough to respond. They wait for their turn to talk. They jump in with their story, their opinion, their perspective. But when you interrupt that pattern with, "Tell me more about," the entire energy shifts. Suddenly the spotlight isn't on you, it's on them. And that's where attraction begins. Because attraction isn't built by how much you can impress someone. Attraction is built by how much you make them feel important. Imagine you're at a networking event. You ask someone what they do, and they give you a standard answer. "I work in marketing," or "I'm a teacher," or "I run a small business." Most people would nod politely, maybe share their own job title, and move on. But if you respond with, "Tell me more about what made you want to get into that," the dynamic changes. You're no longer just another face they met that night. You've invited them to share their story. You've given them space to talk about something that matters to them. That one small moment can leave a lasting impression. Or think about relationships. How often do people feel like their partner isn't really listening? That their thoughts or feelings don't matter? Saying, "Tell me more about how that made you feel," or "Tell me more about what you need right now," communicates care, empathy, and attention. And those are the ingredients of real connection. That's how you move past surface level attraction and into something meaningful. Even in conflict, these 4 words hold power. Picture a tense conversation with a co-worker or a disagreement with a friend. Most people escalate by defending themselves or firing back. But if you say, "Tell me more about why that bothered you," you shift from confrontation to understanding. You show that you're not there to win, you're there to understand. And when people feel understood, defenses come down, respect goes up, attraction grows. What's beautiful about these 4 words is that they aren't about manipulation. You're not using them as a trick. They only work when you mean them. If you're faking it, people can tell. But when you genuinely want to learn more, when you're truly curious, these words unlock trust. They make people feel like they matter, and that is one of the rarest experiences in today's world. The reason these words work so well is because they give control back to the other person. So much of life is people feeling ignored, dismissed, or talked over. When you say, "Tell me more about," you're giving them permission to take up space, to share, to be seen. That moment of empowerment creates a bond that's far stronger than a clever joke or a flashy appearance ever could. And here's something worth noticing: the best communicators, the leaders people follow, the friends people love to be around, they all have this in common. They ask more than they tell. They listen more than they talk. They make people feel like their story matters. And it's not because they have all the answers. It's because they know how to ask the right questions. Those 4 words are one of the most powerful tools you can carry with you into any conversation. Now imagine the ripple effect if you made this a habit. Every interaction you have, whether with a stranger, a friend, a coworker, or someone you love, becomes an opportunity to draw people closer. Instead of conversations that die out after a few sentences, you unlock depth. Instead of people walking away and forgetting you, they remember the way you made them feel. Instead of pushing people away with self-centeredness, you attract them by showing genuine curiosity. It doesn't matter if you're introverted, extroverted, young, old, wealthy, or just starting out. These 4 words level the playing field, because attraction at its core isn't about perfection, it's about connection. And connection is built by listening, by caring, by giving someone the gift of your full attention. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, try it. Replace the urge to respond with the choice to invite. Instead of talking about yourself, give them the floor. Look them in the eye, lean in, and say, "Tell me more about." Then watch how quickly the walls come down, how naturally the trust builds, and how effortlessly the attraction grows. Why do these 4 words work so powerfully? Why does simply saying, "Tell me more about," completely change the direction of a conversation, shift the energy between 2 people, and build attraction almost instantly? The answer lies in human psychology. At our core, every human being has 3 deep needs in communication: the need to feel seen, the need to feel heard, and the need to feel valued. When those needs are met, people naturally gravitate toward you. When they're not met, people shut down, pull away, or guard themselves. These 4 words touch every single one of those needs at the same time. That's why they're magnetic. Think about the last time you shared something personal with someone. Maybe it was about your day, maybe it was a story, maybe it was a dream or a problem. What happens if the other person immediately interrupts, dismisses, or shifts the attention back to themselves? You feel ignored. You feel like your words didn't matter. That builds distance instead of attraction. But now imagine that same moment, and the other person leans in and says, "Tell me more about that." Suddenly, the spotlight is on you in the best possible way. You feel safe to share, and in that safety, a bond begins to form. Psychologically, this happens because those 4 words signal curiosity, and curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in building trust. When someone is genuinely curious about you, it feels like validation. It feels like proof that what you're saying matters. In a world where people are constantly scrolling, distracted, and moving too fast, being given that kind of attention is rare. Rarity creates value, and that's exactly why these words have such a strong pull. There's also something fascinating about how our brains respond to listening. Neuroscience tells us that when people talk about themselves, their brain releases dopamine, the same chemical linked to pleasure and reward. That means every time you ask someone to tell you more, you're not just being polite, you're literally giving their brain a hit of reward. You're creating a positive association between their experience of talking to you and the pleasure they feel while sharing. That's why they'll remember you. That's why they'll want to talk to you again. Another layer of psychology here is control. Most people walk around feeling like they don't have control over their circumstances, over how others see them, even over conversations. When you say, "Tell me more about," you hand the steering wheel back to them. You're saying, "This space is yours. Take it." That sense of empowerment makes people feel respected, and respect is the foundation of attraction. Nobody is drawn to someone who makes them feel small. Everybody is drawn to someone who makes them feel big. Now let's look at empathy. Attraction doesn't grow in a vacuum. It grows in spaces where empathy is present. "Tell me more about" is essentially an invitation for empathy. It's you saying, "I want to step into your shoes. I want to understand what this means to you." That kind of empathy lowers defenses. It signals safety. And psychology tells us people are wired to move closer to what feels safe. That's why when you use these words, people feel more comfortable opening up, sharing more deeply, and trusting you with information they wouldn't normally give away. That trust becomes the foundation of connection. It also plays into something called the reciprocity principle. Humans naturally want to match the energy they're given. When you give someone curiosity, attention, and space to speak, they feel an unconscious pull to return it, which means later in the conversation, they'll be far more likely to ask about you, to listen to you, to give you the same respect you gave them. And here's the secret: when they do, it won't feel forced. It will feel natural because you set the tone. There's also the simple truth that our culture is starved of good listeners. We live in a world where most people are performers, not partners in conversation. They're waiting for their turn to speak, trying to prove their intelligence, trying to impress. But psychology proves that the people we find most attractive aren't necessarily the ones who dominate conversations. They're the ones who make us feel important in them. Those 4 words cut straight to the heart of that. They flip the spotlight from performance to presence, and presence is magnetic. Here's something else: when you say, "Tell me more about," you're not just connecting with someone's words, you're connecting with their identity. Every story they tell, every experience they share is a piece of who they are. By inviting them to expand, you're essentially saying, "Who you are matters to me." That message goes deeper than compliments, deeper than surface-level flattery, because it affirms their humanity. And psychology shows us that affirmation creates emotional bonds faster than almost anything else. Even in professional settings, this psychology holds. In business, trust is the currency. Clients, coworkers, bosses, they're all drawn to people they trust. And trust isn't built by showing off your achievements or talking about yourself. It's built by showing that you understand them. When you use these words in a business conversation, you tap directly into that psychology. You're saying, your goals, your challenges, your perspective, they matter. That's when deals get made. That's when partnerships form. That's when influence grows. So when you look at these 4 words through the lens of psychology, it's not magic, it's science. It's human behavior. It's brain chemistry. It's emotional intelligence at work. You're meeting people's deepest needs to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. And when you consistently meet those needs, you become magnetic. You become memorable. You become the kind of person people want in their circle, not just for a moment, but for the long term. It's one thing to understand the power of the words, "Tell me more about," but it's another thing entirely to put them into practice. Knowing these 4 words isn't enough. You've got to weave them into the rhythm of your everyday conversations until they feel natural, until they're not just something you say, but something you live by. Because the real power of these words shows up in the little moments, the ordinary exchanges where most people don't bother to dig deeper. Let's start with casual conversations. You run into someone at work, or maybe it's a neighbor, or even a friend you haven't seen in a while. They give you the usual polite answer to "How are you?" Maybe they say, "Oh, it's been a busy week." Most people nod, smile, and move on, but not you. You lean in and say, "Tell me more about what's been keeping you busy." Instantly, you've opened a door. Suddenly, you're not just another small talker, you're someone who's actually interested. And people can feel the difference between small talk and real talk. That shift alone is enough to take you from forgettable to magnetic. Now picture yourself in a professional setting. You're in a meeting, maybe pitching an idea or trying to connect with a client. Most people walk into those rooms with one agenda: to push their point across. But what if you flipped it? What if instead of rushing to explain yourself, you slowed down and said, "Tell me more about what success looks like for you in this project"? Right there, you've changed the entire dynamic. Instead of making it about you, you've made it about them. And the funny thing is, by giving someone else the floor, you actually gain more influence. Because people are drawn to the ones who make them feel understood. That's how trust is built, and in business, trust is everything. Let's move into personal relationships. We all know how easy it is to skim the surface with the people closest to us. A spouse comes home and says, "It was a long day." The easy response is a distracted, "Yeah, I get that." But the magnetic response is, "Tell me more about what made it feel long." That's where connection lives. That's where you get beyond the headlines of someone's life and into the story. And that's where attraction grows, not in the grand gestures, but in the daily act of being present enough to ask for more. Think about friendships too. How many friendships fade because the conversations never grow deeper than the surface? By making, "Tell me more about" a habit, you breathe life into your relationships. A friend mentions they're picking up a new hobby. You don't just nod and move on. You say, "Tell me more about why you started that." That one question could open up a story about their childhood, their passions, their struggles, all the things that make them who they are, and suddenly your friendship deepens. These words are also powerful in moments of conflict. Imagine a heated disagreement where voices are raised, emotions are high, and no one feels heard. The natural instinct is to push back, to defend, to win. But when you pause and say, "Tell me more about why you feel this way," you're doing something radical. You're choosing understanding over winning. You're de-escalating by handing the other person space. And 9 times out of 10, that moment lowers the temperature and shifts the conversation toward resolution. That's not weakness, that's strength. Because attraction isn't just about charm, it's about the ability to create peace when things feel chaotic. And here's the beautiful thing: these 4 words don't just work in big, meaningful conversations. They work in small ones too. Imagine you're at a family gathering, someone shares a funny memory. Instead of laughing and letting the moment pass, you say, "Tell me more about that day." Suddenly, everyone leans in closer. The story grows, the laughter grows, and so does the bond. That's the everyday magic of being someone who digs deeper. Even in networking, these words are gold. Most people walk into networking events armed with business cards and elevator pitches. They throw information at people hoping something sticks. But you walk in with curiosity. Someone tells you about their company and you say, "Tell me more about what problem you're solving." Instantly, you're not just another contact, you're the person who cared enough to understand. That's the kind of person people remember and follow up with later. The truth is, using these words isn't about memorizing a script, it's about adopting a posture of curiosity. It's about training yourself to pause when someone gives you a surface answer and ask for the story behind it. That posture doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see them. You start to realize how much depth is hidden beneath ordinary conversations. You discover that people carry incredible stories, lessons, and emotions if only someone takes the time to ask. Here's the thing about these 4 words, "Tell me more about." They aren't just a nice add-on to your conversations. They're not just optional. They're the difference between being someone who attracts and connects and being someone who people forget the second the conversation is over. When you don't use them, the world treats you differently because you've chosen to stay on the surface while everyone else is craving depth. Let's start with the reality of most conversations. Think about how often we're stuck in autopilot. Someone says work is stressful, and what do most people do? They nod, maybe mumble a "yeah, I know what you mean," and then steer the talk back to themselves. That's the default. That's the safe play. But do you know what happens when you live in that zone? You become just another voice in the noise. People walk away from you without remembering anything about you, because you gave them nothing that felt different. You didn't ask, you didn't dive deeper, and you didn't create a moment that mattered. And it's not just about being forgettable, it's about creating distance without realizing it. When you don't give someone space to open up, you're silently telling them, "Your story doesn't matter to me." You may not mean it that way, but that's how it lands. And over time, those little moments build walls. A spouse who keeps getting surface-level responses stops sharing what's really on their heart. A friend who never feels truly asked about their life eventually stops calling. A coworker who feels like you don't listen will stop looping you into opportunities. Without those 4 words, you shut doors without even knowing they were there. Let's go deeper into the psychology of it. Human beings are wired to seek validation. We don't just want to be heard, we want to be understood. When you cut conversations short or only skim the surface, you leave people starving for that validation. And here's the brutal truth: if they don't get it from you, they'll go find it somewhere else. That's how relationships drift. That's how influence slips through your fingers. That's how people you thought were close to you suddenly feel far away. Imagine you're in a conflict. Without these words, you're stuck in a cycle of defensiveness. Someone tells you, "I don't feel like you care," and instead of leaning in with, "Tell me more about why you feel that way," you push back with excuses. You defend, you justify, you talk over them. And the result? The conflict doesn't resolve, it festers. The other person doesn't feel understood, they feel dismissed. And nothing kills attraction faster than dismissal. Now picture a professional setting again. You're in a job interview. The interviewer shares a detail about the company's challenges. You ignore it, stay locked into your rehearsed script, and move on. Without, "Tell me more about," you miss the chance to show curiosity, to uncover what they actually value, to connect on a deeper level. And at the end of the day, guess what? They remember the candidate who asked more, not the one who said more. The opportunity slips away, not because you weren't qualified, but because you weren't curious. And this shows up in networking too. Think about it. How many people have handed you a business card you never used? They didn't ask, they didn't lean in, they just dumped information. Without these 4 words, you become that person. Forgettable, replaceable, just another face in the crowd. But the ones who stand out, the ones you remember, are the ones who took the time to ask you for more. Even with family, the absence of these words has consequences. Kids grow up fast. They throw out clues about what's going on in their world. But if you don't pause and ask them to share more, those clues get smaller and smaller until they disappear. And then one day, you wonder why they don't talk to you anymore. The answer is simple: you didn't ask. You didn't show that you wanted to know. And attraction in its deepest form, the pull of closeness, the bond of trust, dies quietly when curiosity isn't there. The irony is that people think not using these words saves time. They think staying on the surface keeps things easy. But in reality, it costs you more. It costs you trust, opportunities, relationships, influence. Because every time you skip past the chance to ask for more, you're missing the doorway to connection. And connection is where attraction lives. When you start using these 4 words, "Tell me more about," something fascinating happens. At first, you might notice the immediate effect: the way someone's eyes light up, the way their body language shifts, the way they lean in because finally, someone is giving them permission to be heard. But the deeper change doesn't just happen in that moment. It spreads, it creates a ripple effect, and before you know it, the way people see you, the way they respond to you, and even the way they trust you begins to transform. Let's talk about relationships first. When you ask someone to share more, you're not just creating a single moment of connection. You're planting seeds of trust, of openness, of safety. Over time, those seeds grow. A friend who once gave you the highlight reel of their life starts sharing the behind the scenes because they know you're the person who wants to know. A partner who used to brush past their struggles starts to unpack them because they've learned you'll meet them with curiosity, not judgment. That's the ripple effect. It turns small interactions into long-term loyalty. And this loyalty doesn't just stay between 2 people, it extends outward. Think about influence. People talk. When someone feels truly heard by you, they tell others about it. They say things like, "There's just something about them. I always feel better after we talk." And without you realizing it, your name starts circulating in rooms you've never stepped into. Opportunities find you not because you shouted the loudest, because you listened the best. That's influence at its purest form. It also shifts your reputation in ways you can't buy. In a world full of noise, the person who listens becomes rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. The ripple effect means you're no longer just someone who people enjoy talking to. You become the person people need to talk to, because being around you feels different. And that difference is what keeps you top of mind when decisions are being made, when invitations are being extended, when doors are being opened. The ripple even extends to conflict. When you use those 4 words during a disagreement, you disarm defensiveness. You create space for honesty, and that doesn't just resolve the immediate conflict. It changes the way people argue with you moving forward. They stop seeing you as an opponent and start seeing you as a safe place. And when someone trusts that you'll always give them room to explain, they stop holding back. They stop hiding. They start trusting you more deeply. Now think about the professional world. Colleagues and leaders notice patterns. If you're the person who consistently says, "Tell me more about that," you're seen as collaborative, as someone who brings out the best in others. And here's the truth: leaders rise faster when they're trusted. Influence spreads faster when people feel understood. Doors open wider when others believe you actually care about what's behind them. That's the professional ripple. Promotions, partnerships, opportunities, they're all downstream of curiosity. The ripple also works internally, because when you build the habit of asking for more, you start seeing people differently. You begin to notice details you used to overlook. You discover stories you never imagined, and that changes you. It makes you more empathetic, more patient, more human. And when you grow in those ways, the attraction multiplies, not because you've become someone fake, but because you've become someone real, someone grounded, someone people feel safe around. And here's something we don't talk about enough: attraction isn't just about drawing people in. It's about keeping them close. Surface level charm might get you attention, but it fades fast. What lasts, what truly endures, is the pull of someone who makes you feel seen. And every time you invite someone to share more, you're strengthening that invisible bond. That bond is what keeps relationships alive, teams loyal, clients committed, and friendships unshakable. Picture this in your daily life. At first, it's just one conversation. You ask a coworker to tell you more, and suddenly they share something about their project you never knew. The next week, they come back to you first with new ideas because they trust you'll listen. A friend opens up about a struggle after you ask for more, and the next time they need someone, you're the call they make. A family member feels lighter after you invite them to share, and next holiday, they sit a little closer to you at the table. That's how the ripple spreads. One small question, one big impact. And the more you practice it, the bigger the ripple becomes. It's not just about attracting individuals, it's about attracting communities. Because when you consistently show up as someone who listens, who validates, who draws people out, you naturally gather people around you. They want to be in your orbit. They want to be influenced by you, and they want to stay. That's the ripple effect of attraction. It doesn't just change conversations, it changes culture. It doesn't just shift how people see you, it shifts how they see themselves in your presence. And that, more than anything, is the kind of magnetism that never fades. So here's what it all comes down to. We spend so much of our lives chasing attraction, trying to look the part, sound the part, play the part, when in reality, the most magnetic thing you can do has nothing to do with status or appearance. It comes down to 4 simple words. Tell me more about. Those words break through the surface. They shift conversations from forgettable to unforgettable. They take you from being just another face in the room to being the person everyone feels drawn to, because you made them feel seen. We've talked about why words matter more than looks, why these 4 words change everything, the psychology behind them, how to use them in your daily life, what happens if you don't, and finally, the ripple effect they create. And the truth is, all of it points to one thing: connection. That's the currency. That's the magnet. That's the difference between people who push others away and people who attract opportunities, influence, and relationships that last. So the next time you're in a conversation, whether it's with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or even someone you've just met, don't stop at the surface. Don't let the moment pass. Use those 4 words. Open the door. Watch what happens when someone realizes you actually care enough to know more. Because attraction isn't about pulling people in with flash. It's about drawing them in with depth. And if you want to be the kind of person who others can't help but trust, respect. And remember, start with the simplest, most powerful invitation you can give. Tell me more about